I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Thursday, April 27th at 6:35 to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Selectmen comments and announcements. Danielle?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Barbara?
Trying to think, do we have anything going on?
We have election on Monday, but if this is taped, it may.
Yeah, please come out and vote on Monday. And thank you to all our poll workers in advance.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. I only had, other than the election on Monday, I just wanted to make note of a fellow who passed away. You probably saw this on Facebook. Richard Dick Bro. He's a 1965 graduate of Murdoch High School. He had a career of over 32 years in law enforcement, primarily as a New Hampshire State Police trooper. But he started his career in his hometown in April 1971 when he joined the Winchendon Police Department. Served a couple years here before heading to New Hampshire to be a state trooper. So I want to thank him for his service and let his family know that our thoughts and prayers are with them. And that's all I have. Public comments and announcements? None out there? Okay. So the business for tonight is for the Board of Selectmen to recommend or not recommend special town meeting, annual town meeting warrant articles for the May 15, 2023 election, town meeting. All votes will be taken roll call vote. Selectman Audrey Labrie is remote via telephone. We will briefly explain the article because we've already had 2 meetings on this and there was a public hearing last night. We'll look if there's any boss comments or questions, and then we'll take motions to recommend or not recommend it, and then because we have a member on phone, it'll be all roll call votes. So with that, we're going to start with the special town meeting. And first one is Article 1, which is report of the Finance Committee. Now, because they're not going to have a report, I will make the motion that we pass over this one.
I'll second it.
And been made and seconded. Any comments? None? Roll call vote. Member Labrie.
Aye.
Member Salter.
Aye.
Member Lapointe.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So we pass over that one. The second article under special town meeting is Article 2 to transfer from free cash the sum of $260,000 for use by the Board of Selectmen to offset the snow and ice deficit in the Department of Public Works snow and ice budget. Any comments or questions on this?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 2 of the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Moving on to the annual town meeting. Article 1 is to hear and act on the report of the Finance Committee, and they will have a report they will be presenting. Any questions or comments?
I guess my question is, what did they finally decide?
I think they're going to talk about things like stabilization funds, the funds for the free cash.
In OPEB and things like that, was that right?
And, yeah, right.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember what they
There might
finally...
be other things, because they're gonna do it through emails, get some stuff together, but I think that's the gist of it.
Thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 1.
Second.
Been made and seconded. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay. Article 2 is the enterprise account authorization article. See if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53, F 1/2 of the Massachusetts General Laws and establish a cable public access enterprise fund effective fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023. Any comments, questions?
One more time, just for clarification. If Article 2 passes, but is it like Article 14 or something does not pass, then Article 2 is null and void? Or is it the other way around?
No, so if you vote to approve Article 2, and if the later article to fund it fails, you've still established a PEG Media enterprise account, you've just opted to not fund it. So it'd be the same, for example, if you voted to not fund the water enterprise account. The water enterprise account still exists, it's just unfunded for fiscal year '24.
So there would still be a line in the budget, it would just be zero.
But why? What would the point of that be?
I would not recommend people vote that way. There'd be no point in doing that. So on the inverse, you could vote to not approve the PEG Media enterprise account in Article 2, which I would not recommend, which would pretty much negate the existence of Article 14 because you wouldn't have anywhere to appropriate the funds to, because no fund would exist.
Okay. So it was the other way around than how I originally said it. I knew one would negate the other. Okay, thank you.
We have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will move to recommend Article 2.
Second?
Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Article 3, and again, this one is one of three that sort of tie all in together. To vote to establish an opioid abatement stabilization fund in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 5B of the Mass General Laws to be used upon further appropriation for the purposes of implementing the abatement strategy set forth in the Massachusetts State Subdivision Agreements for statewide opioid settlements dated March 4th, 2022, consistent with state guidelines and regulations, further clarifying allowable uses of opioid litigation settlement funds.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Now, again, knowing that these three tie in together, but there were multiple multiple suits, am I right? That we were expecting to get money from, but, and I think what I'm trying to ask you is, knowing that we already agreed to the, multiple community, thank you, I couldn't, but the other, one of the other settlements, at least one that I'm aware of, was not going to be appropriated to GAMP, is that correct?
I don't think a definitive decision was made on that, but I would say if it gets to the point you're getting to, for future appropriations, I would recommend the Board of Selectmen going through a process of discussing where those should go, because I would say that the conversation you did have was exclusively pertaining to the first round that we had discussed at that time.
That's how I think I understood it at the time.
Yeah.
And when I was watching FinCom last night, I went, wait a minute, because there were multiple, at least two.
Yeah, so if like a giant one comes in down the road, that does not mean that it's automatically lumped into this. I would, in my mind, that would be a separate conversation.
And a separate warrant article at that time, or?
Depending
or-
what you choose to do with it, yeah.
Because in my head, we only approved the first settlement that we settled,
Yeah, it was,
or that the state settled.
the amount that it was, the first year payment, by example, was about 14,000, give or take. That's the one you're discussing. I actually think I have it, sorry, in the description
I
here.
felt like it was more.
It was 380,000 over 16 years.
15,000 in the first year.
So that was the first one.
Correct.
And then the second one was
Has
smaller.
not, has not, yeah, much smaller, but that one hasn't really been discussed yet where that.
Right, and that was my question. Like, does it automatically, if these three pass, turn into the Gamma Fund, if you will?
It wouldn't turn into the Gamma Fund, so the way I'm reading these articles, it would authorize the Board of Selectmen to appropriate those funds, but it doesn't necessarily have to go to Gamma. But I would just stress that for the sake of this article, it would just be that first piece. So what I'm specifically calling out in this slide here, that 380,000 over 16 years, because that's what you all agreed to. I think if future payments came down the road and if somebody tried to automatically give that to Gamma, take a timestamp of whatever this point is in this meeting, and you can go back and point to it.
And we'll make sure it's in the minutes so that
Yep.
it's easy to find. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend Article 3.
Second.
Been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay. Article 4, which is really the second of those three. Vote to accept the fourth paragraph of Chapter 40, Section 5B of Mass General Laws, which allows the dedication without further appropriation of all or a percentage not less than 25% of particular fees, charges, or receipts to the opioid abatement stabilization fund established under Chapter 40, Section 5B of Mass General Law to be effective for all fiscal years beginning on July 1st, 2023. Questions or comments? I guess I would have a question. Could you just explain that one more time for me?
Sure, so, and specifically, I think the important piece in the explanation is what's the difference between this one and Article 5, the next one. So Article 4 is basically saying that all future payments that are received will go to this fund that you established in the previous article. The next article is saying, with that said, for the first year, we're appropriating and setting that into motion. So that's kind of the difference between the two. So out of the three opioid articles you have, the first one is creating the account. The second one is saying you don't need to vote on this every year thereafter for the length of that agreement, it's going to go to this account. The third one is saying, because this is the first year of that agreement, you do need to vote it in and appropriate it. So once you lock in that third article, the second article will allow it to roll indefinitely until the end of the agreement.
The agreement with,
The 16-year settlement.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
The settlement.
sorry, yeah, the settlement.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So to clarify, the agreement dated March 4th, 2022 only calls out that first settlement. It doesn't call out all of them that are being worked on.
Correct.
Sorry, and I know you probably said that, I just wanted
Thank you.
to hear, I'm sorry.
Could you all try pressing the button on your thing the next time it hisses to see if, when it has to be doing it though? Like hold it. And if it stops when you're holding it, that means it's your mic.
Oh, okay. It's that one.
It's not important. I'll just do my best to ignore it.
It might be this one. I think it's this one.
Something with Danielle.
Is there a power button? Sorry, I don't know where.
Sorry, there's 24 more of these and I'm gonna go crazy.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 4.
Second.
Been made and seconded for Article, to recommend Article 4. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 5, which is the third of those three, to see if the town will vote to dedicate all or a percentage which may not be less than 25% of the receipts from the statewide opioid settlements as defined in the state subdivision agreement for statewide opioid settlements to the opioid abatement stabilization fund established in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 5B of Mass General Laws effective for the fiscal year 2024, beginning on July 1st, 2023.
All right, now I have another question. Just reading the words, you can appropriate all but not less than 25%. So if a town manager perhaps wanted to put 70% in the general fund, according to these, could he?
No, so, and that is coming from Mass General Law, so as part of this settlement, you don't just get, it's not just carte blanche, you have to specifically use those funds for opioid abatement purposes. So if it fell to free cash, then it could be spent on anything. And so as part of that settlement, the Commonwealth determined that you have to use a sizable portion of it specifically on that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to recommend make a motion to recommend Article 5.
Second.
Been made and seconded. Article 5 to recommend. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 6, revolving funds. Vote to fix the maximum amount to be spent during fiscal year 2024, beginning on July 1st, 2023, for the revolving funds established in town bylaws for certain departments, boards, committees, agencies, or officers in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. And I will point out that all of these revolving funds are the same ones that were on last year's town meeting, and the amounts have stayed the same.
Here's a question, what is block program income? And there is no amount there.
The text of that line is rolling, so it's community development block program income.
Okay.
Caught me off guard before, too.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 6.
Second.
Made and seconded to recommend Article 6. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
I will abstain as I am a member of the Agricultural Commission.
Okay. Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay. Article 7, senior tax work-off is vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from other available funds the sum of $7,700 for the senior tax work-off program. Any comments, questions?
No, I just hope that people take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 7, the senior tax work-off.
Second.
Been made and seconded to recommend Article 7. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. Article 8, nonprofit assistance, vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from other available funds the sum of $27,500 as a grant to the Nonprofit Community Action Committee, Inc. Questions or comments?
I do have one. Since the town has historically always donated this money to the CAC, is there any accountability, like as in, when we apply for grants, we have to demonstrate how much we've spent in X amount of areas. Is there any way that there's some accountability towards the town? So that people know what they're getting for their money?
Sure. So starting this year, I had requested, it seemed historically this didn't occur, so I had requested that the CAC start coming annually to a Board of Selectmen meeting to highlight the work they're doing in the community, but also underscore what shifts they might be seeing in terms of demographics they're serving or the amount of people they're serving in the community. And so I would encourage them to continue doing that annual report, to come by and just really highlight the work that they're doing.
But I feel like what I'm looking for is, I don't know, you know, where the report in the PowerPoint was great, but is there some way to say, well, you know, we spent X amount of dollars on food, X amount of dollars on clothing or housing or programs to retrain, you know what I mean?
Just something to put on file.
Yeah, something that people can look at and say, you know, that this is where my tax dollars are going, because we do donate it, but at the same time that there's a little bit of accountability there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we can, I think it's perfectly reasonable to request them to just do like a one-page, just
Yeah,
fact
it
sheet.
doesn't have to be elaborate, just kind of basic overall, so that people get a better understanding of that segment of the community that's being served.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 8.
Second.
Been motion to recommend and seconded for Article 8. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
I'm going to abstain because my daughter's very involved with the CAC.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 9, organizational restructure article. Vote to accept the town manager's proposed 2023 organizational change to staffing as required by town charter, which is outlined in a document on file with town clerk. Any questions or comments?
I do. I really, I'm struggling with this one. I don't like it, and I'll tell you, it's because it's an all-or-nothing proposition. It can't be amended on town meeting floor. And I think, I don't feel in my heart that this keeps with the intent and the flavor of our town charter. Our town charter is really established as a check and balance on government. And this is the people's opportunity to do that. And by saying, well, this is an all or nothing, and not really giving them time to tell you what they want, I have a problem with that. Does that make sense? You know, with everything else, you know, they will come up and discuss every other article, you know, and hold the line items in the budget and whatnot. But this article, not saying they can't discuss it, but it's either voted up or voted down. And I feel like there's something about it that article, in the charter intends that the town, for whatever position is being added, the town should have that final say on whether or not they want that position added as an individual. And so having the three all bunched together, and I don't like the precedent that it sets in you know, maybe legally it would pass muster, but it's kind of a loophole, I feel like, that you're just, you know, throwing this and it's an all or nothing thing. And I feel like that's taking some of the power out of the hands of the residents. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say? Anyway, I have a problem with it.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend Article 9 of the annual town meeting.
And get a second?
Seconded.
Motion to recommend and seconded Article 9. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
No.
And the chair will vote aye. Article 10. This is the customary general budget article. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from other available funds the sum of $16,744,246 for the operating budget of the town for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023. Any questions or comments on the overall budget?
I think I would just reiterate that, Finance Committee had a problem as they didn't really have a breakdown of revenues to offset the budget, to make sure, that it's in good order. And that makes me nervous, that, that there's some part of the revenues that we're guesstimating, even albeit conservatively.
I can provide some clarification there if I could.
Okay.
Not to talk over you. So the concern that they had specifically regarding free cash wasn't whether or not this budget as proposed balanced. Their concern was about, specifically about warrant article 22, which is proposing using $550,000 in free cash.
Right.
Specifically, Chairman Kane, who was the lone dissenting vote on that 4-1 vote for approval, his concern was that doing so would deplete free cash to about $215,000 or so, give or take. In the debate that he and I are having is whether or not that those resources are effectively immediately going to be replenished in the form of free cash certified this fall upcoming. So to clarify, the concern wasn't that there wasn't enough revenue to balance this budget, there is. The concern in his part was that if we're depleting free cash to that level, whether or not it's going to replenish at a certain rate. So one item that was highlighted, I believe, by Mr. Quartz on the Finance Committee was that even if it doesn't, you still have the $215,000 free cash in hand, but additionally, you'll still have about $300,000 or so after the water pipe and ARPA funds to fall back on as well as a cushion. So that was the back and forth you may be referencing from last night.
Any other questions? Okay, can we get a motion for Article 10?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to recommend Article 10.
Second.
Motion has been made to recommend and seconded for Article 10. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 11, Water Enterprise. Vote to appropriate the sum of $1,012,542.48 for direct costs of the Water Department Enterprise Fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and that indirect costs of $193,815.15 appropriated in the general budget be funded by water receipts. Any comments, questions on this?
Nope. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 11.
Second.
Article 11's been motioned to recommend and seconded. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 12, wastewater enterprise. Vote to appropriate the sum of $1,447,534, wastewater receipts of $1,002,124, and betterment revenues of $445,410 for the direct costs of the wastewater treatment department enterprise fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and that indirect cost of $173,097.40 appropriated in the general government budget be funded by wastewater receipts. Any comments, questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 12.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 12. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 13, Transfer Station Enterprise. Vote to appropriate the sum of $242,337 from transfer station receipts for direct costs of the Transfer Station Enterprise Fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and that indirect costs of $13,761.34 appropriated in the general government budget be funded by transfer station receipts.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 13, Transfer Station Enterprise.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 13. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Article 14, Cable Public Access Enterprise Fund. Vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $111,300 to operate the public education and governmental access media enterprise for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023. Questions or comments?
If Article 2 doesn't pass, then Article 14 null and void?
Correct, you would pass it over.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 14, the Cable Public Access Enterprise Fund.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 14. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 15, vote to raise and appropriate, this is school department budget, vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds a sum of $16,983,226, required net school spending of $20,130,691 plus $50,000 of the prior year's override that includes an escalator and increased funding less $3,197,464.94 for net school spending and eligible indirect costs budgeted in the general government budget for school expenses for the operating budget of the Winchton Public Schools for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would just like to ask, because I feel like I reread this 3 times. The school budget plus $50,000 of the original $350,000 override, correct? Plus the escalator, which is the 2.5% that it's increased in value every year. So they're getting $50,000 plus the escalator, or just the plain $50,000?
So I went back and forth with the wording on that with legal counsel a couple times. And so the way it was originally worded did call out specifically that it was a 2.5% escalator. But the concern that I rose was that typically it lists the full amount of the override and then references that 2.5% escalator. So we felt the appropriate resolution there would be to remove the reference to 2.5%. But do acknowledge that there's an escalator because of Prop 2.5. But the objective there specifically is to call out that unlike prior years where the entire override went to the schools, only $50,000 specifically is going to them this year.
So not the escalator?
Well, I mean,
Or the escalator just on 50,000?
the 50,000 is part of a larger sum that is impacted by the escalator.
So they're just getting 50 from it.
That's what I wanted to know.
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 15, the school department budget.
Second.
Motion has been made to, and seconded to recommend Article 15. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 16, Montechusett Regional Vocational Technical School. Vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $706,060 to fund the town's assessment for its share of the Montechusett Regional Vocational Technical School budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023. Any questions or comments?
Nope. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 16, Montechusett Regional Vocational Technical School.
Seconded.
Motion has been made to, and seconded to recommend Article 16. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Capital articles, Article 17, appropriation, capital improvements for fiscal year 2024, free cash. See if the town will vote to transfer from free cash a sum of $224,750, and that the town be authorized to accept any available grant funds for the purposes of funding the following capital requests, which are Blair Square, pre-design, $130,000, Grove Street parking lot, $21,750, salt brine system, $30,000, the generator house for $17,000, and the scuba replacement phase 1, $26,000. Questions, comments?
One more time. Again, you know it's not the last one. This is an all or nothing article, correct?
You can pull out pieces of this if
Can
you'd
you
like
pull out
to.
pieces of this?
Yeah, we would just have to make sure we triple check the math on the floor.
Okay. Because I know that some of these are getting pulled from different,
Gotta have a calculator.
I know, my goodness. But yeah, again, my concern is, that they can't pick and choose. Should maybe somebody, feel very adamantly that Blair Square shouldn't be revisited or something,
Yeah, I
Okay.
can see your point there. We don't want to lose everything if it's one thing that the town doesn't
that
really
sticks in their
favor.
craw, right?
And I would stress that the only reason Article 9 is like that is because that's the way it's laid out in our charter.
Yeah, but if you took them apart and like set up three different ones, like say, and I'll pick on the transfer station. Maybe they don't want the transfer station if we were gonna, whatever. But we all know everybody uses it. So I thought they were pretty safe, but give them the opportunity to say, no, this is not the direction we want the town going in. Does that make, that,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Audrey Labrie. Just to clarify, Barbara, I understand exactly what, 100% what you're saying, but I want to make sure I understand town manager's response. If we get to this article on town floor and someone, for whatever reason, feels that the generator house is not something that we should do at this point, can the article be amended on the floor to remove that single line item?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Now, in the event that happens, the way that we put these capital articles in here, it's by funding source. So that one line item may or may not appear in additional funding source line items. I know that the handout that we're going to have showing this one item in the different funding sources will help us keep track of that. But just something to be aware of, that in the event that happens, we need to make sure that it is also removed from any additional capital article that it appears in with that different funding source. I don't think Barbara, the first thought I had when you said that is to put each individual item as their own article, but then you're adding a ton of articles, whether that's a way to go in the future, something we can certainly talk about the next time that I think a warrant comes up. And the Capital Planning Committee can talk about that as well. Is this the best way? Do people like this way that we presented at town meeting? Or, do we tweak it down the road to make it, is there a better way to present it? Thank you.
Sure, and by example, so for Article 17, I don't know why we're all picking on the generator, but
It's easy.
yeah, so if you were to remove that one, what you would be doing is someone would have to make a motion to amend Article 17 to reduce the amount that the town would vote to transfer from free cash. So the sum of $224,750, reducing that by $17,000. And so
Right.
that someone would have
do
to.
the math at the same time. Yes.
Yeah, so someone would have to make that motion. There would be a vote on that motion on whether or not to amend it. People could vote to agree to amend it or to not amend it, and then they would vote on either the amended article or the article as it was.
Okay. So it may be a little messy, but it can be done. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 17 appropriation capital improvements for fiscal year 2024 out of free cash.
Motion's been made and seconded to recommend Article 17. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Article 18, appropriation capital improvements for fiscal year 2024, 5-year borrowing. Vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds and/or borrow the sum of $784,181 for the purposes of funding the following capital requests, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer will, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow under and pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8 of the general bylaws, and these are Town Hall repairs, Phase 1 East for $250,000, six-wheel dump Mack truck, $244,181, Winchendon Community Park barn exterior, $140,000, high school parking lot, $150,000. Comments, questions?
I think when I look at this particular article, and the idea of borrowing is usually very difficult for people, but I think in checking with the town manager, that no credit is like worse than bad credit, so borrowing is
Right.
in fact
Yep.
good for the town.
Yeah, that's correct. So people's knee-jerk reaction is that you don't want to go into debt, which is a good inclination to have. But you do want to have, much like your personal credit, it is healthy to have some debt, a certain amount of debt. And so for items like this in particular, town hall repairs is a good example, and not to belabor the point, but I think we've given this as an example several times. You could wait to save up that $250,000, but by the time you save that $250,000, the cost of inflation for the project is going to outstrip that cost hand over fist, given the current economic climate. And so while it seems counterintuitive, you are actually saving money in the long run by borrowing for that type of project.
And it also helps with the fiscal health of the town.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may piggyback on that, absolutely. It's not just the matter that the town has debt, but that it handles its debt well. The same applies to us as individuals. The fact that the town takes on this debt, it manages it well, pays it back on time, et cetera, maybe even a little bit early. We saw that in our credit rating score going up a little bit some months ago. It helps us sometimes in the percentage of interest rate. The better credit rating we have, the better we manage our credit. Maybe we get a 0.25% off or something like that. So absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to recommend Article 18 appropriation capital improvement for fiscal year 2024, 5-year borrowing.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 18. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 19, appropriation capital improvements for fiscal year 2024, Transfer Station Enterprise Fund, 10-year borrowing. Vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds and/or borrow the sum of $223,411 for the purposes of funding the following capital requests, and that would be for the transfer station, a roll-off truck. And that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow under the, and pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8 of the general bylaws. Questions or comments?
I do. Just, I don't know, did we ever come to a conclusion why we're going with the straight purchasing of vehicles rather than leasing?
For this particular item, no, but just to rehash, the reasoning for this purchase is that we currently sub that service out of house. And the expense for that, the agreement we have is set to expire, and if we continue with it, it's gonna escalate pretty drastically. And so the intention of this is to bring this item in-house to save us money in the long run. One question mark people had was, why do a 10-year instead of a 5-year? And the reasoning was that, you know, the 5-year is preferred, but you're paying more upfront over a 5-year period. And the concern being that the expense of covering that more dense annual expense would have to be offset by raising fees further. And we felt by stretching it out over 10 years, it would help kind of soften the edges of that, so we wouldn't have to pass it on to ratepayers.
Can I ask one more question?
As many as you'd like.
We all know I'm gonna anyway, so. The roll-off truck, as opposed to like the cruisers or water truck, probably won't be driven as far as the daily maintenance. Does that make sense? The daily maintenance, the trucks in the fleet that's out there on the daily basis. The roll-off truck, I would assume, is not gonna be driven so it wouldn't deteriorate in 5 years as opposed to 10.
It would have a longer life, but I'll let Brian speak to that a little bit more.
So the truck would most likely haul 1 day a week. Maybe if it was busier down there, it would haul maybe an additional couple times, but not every single day. So the truck's gonna, so typically the transfer station, well, starting in July, the transfer station will be open from Wednesday to Saturday. Josh will do most of his moves on Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning. We haven't figured out the hours for Wednesday yet, but he'd move all the trash that came in from the previous week that week. The benefit to this is right now, with it contracted out, we have to estimate and kind of guess whether we have enough room in the current dumpsters rather than waiting till they're full and then trucking them. So one, it's gonna reduce us emptying 3/4 full dumpsters, because we know we're not gonna get another week out of it, and they only currently empty on Tuesdays. So we're gonna maximize the amount of capacity within the dumpsters, so we're hauling full dumpsters. So it's gonna lessen the amount of trips. But to the cost that it's gonna cost to run those trucks, depending on who gets the contract, whether we haul up to New Hampshire or we haul to Leominster, that's the extent of the trip. So it's back and forth, and it depends, because like, if you take the recycling containers, that gets emptied every week, that gets filled every week. But the trash, we do every other week, but in the winter it slows down, so we might be able to get every third week. Right now, we can't do that, because if we run out of room with the trash and we gamble and go on a third week, we got no way to swap the dumpster out. So the ultimate goal is to have a spare dumpster that does the trash or the recycling, so that, let's say it's Saturday morning and the trash dumpster's full, Josh can pull the trash dumpster away, stick it to the side, put a dumpster in place, and then deal with that dumpster on Tuesday. So it's gonna make it so that we can get more capacity and we do less trucking. So we're hauling full dumpsters rather than three-quarter or half or so on and so forth. So in whole, it's gonna reduce the amount of trucking that we're gonna do. So we're gonna maximize on what we're doing. Does that make sense?
It kind of does, but I think in my head, you know, with the concern with the 10-year loan as opposed to the 5-year loan, is thinking that, well, it's not going to be used every day like the cruisers or
So
the other
we did
trucks.
10 years, right? And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
We did 10 years because we didn't want to come out of the gate and say, oh, we need to drastically raise prices. I strongly feel that we're going to save money by filling the full dumpsters and not paying a third-party company to haul the dumpsters. We're going to have that savings. So once we get a year's worth of data under our belt, we can probably reduce that 10-year borrow down and pay it down quicker because we'll be saving money on the back end. Does that make sense? So if we're not hauling dumpsters as much, we're not spending as much money. So right now, we spend roughly $100,000 to $110,000 in trucking and disposal. So if we're only paying the disposal and a little bit of diesel fuel, we're gonna have more money left there, which is gonna make it so that we can pay that truck down quicker, which will allow us to pay that loan off a lot sooner because we won't be spending $100,000 on trucking and disposal anymore. We might reduce that cost down. The thing that we need to figure out is what our current rates are gonna be with the new contract for dumping of these dumpsters. The contract's set to expire this summer, so we're trying to dial it in, and this is one way where we can absolutely control costs by not sending half full or three-quarter full dumpsters to get dumped and paying those trucking fees.
So 10 years is worst case, but possibly sooner.
You're 100% correct. That's the whole intention of this, is for us to have the control and not have the control of somebody else.
I just, you know what it is? There's nothing worse than having your car break down when you're still making payments on it. That's kind of where
So-
my head is.
The lifespan of this truck is 20 to 25 years, and I'd be happy, or I'd put my neck on the line to say that I don't see why we wouldn't be able to get 25 years because it's not gonna have the mileage that a DPW truck that's used 5 days a week has. So it's used a couple days. It's the same as our bigger dump trucks. The lifespan on our bigger dump trucks is 20 to 22 years, but because of the infrequent use, if we want to put it in that terms, it's going to extend the lifespan of that truck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to recommend Article 19, the appropriation capital improvement for fiscal year 2024, Transfer Station Enterprise Fund, 10-year borrowing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 19. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 20, appropriation capital improvements for fiscal year 2024, Water Enterprise Fund 5-year loan. Vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds and/or borrow the sum of $98,884 for the purposes of funding the following capital requests, which is from the Water Department, a service truck. And that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow under and pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8 of the general laws. Questions, comments?
How many years for that?
5.
5? Should we have 5 years in there like we have even, no, doesn't matter?
I can change the slide, but it is on the cover sheet for the warrant.
Okay. I just feel like people would want to know that since we went to a 10-year and they might get concerned. Okay. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to recommend Article 20, the appropriation capital improvements for fiscal year 2024 Water Enterprise Fund for the Water Department service truck.
Yeah, so if you were using it,
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 20. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Article 21, appropriation capital improvements for fiscal year 2024, grants and other services. Vote to appropriate the sum of $136,918, and that the town be authorized to accept any available grant funds for the purposes of funding the following capital requests. Police cruiser replacements, $136,918.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to clarify, that's 2 cruisers.
That is correct.
Two. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 21, the appropriation capital improvement for fiscal year 2024 from grants and other sources to police cruiser replacements.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to recommend Article 21. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 22, appropriation paving plan free cash. See if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $550,000 and that the town be authorized to accept any available grant funds for the purposes of funding a portion of the fiscal year 2024 paving plan. Questions or comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This is Audrey. I understand that this is the article that the Finance Committee voted 4-1 to recommend, correct?
That's correct.
Well, I acknowledge and recognize, the concern of the members. I feel that paving, the road condition is of paramount importance to our citizens. And this is an amount that I think will be well spent. And it's unlike so much of what we spend and agree to spend, there's no real tangible evidence of the good that money does. Money that goes towards paving, while it may not be your road, it is a very visible concrete show of the money that's going back to the town. Thank you.
I would just like to add that I also see this as a safety issue because I see on social media, obviously people have damaged their vehicles on these roads, and I've hit a few myself. With these trees along the road in the shade and in the sun, you just can't see these holes coming up on you. But my big concern is particularly for the roads that are really damaged and need repair, is ambulance, fire trucks, police going up there. Particularly if you have somebody in a car accident and they're in an ambulance, they can't be hitting potholes. So it's going to slow them down, and that could be devastating to slow down an ambulance because you've got bad roads. So I see it as a safety issue also. Any other comments?
I think, no, I absolutely agree, but at the same time, I just feel like, we're supposed to be putting money into, from free cash into stabilization. And we had started that trend, then we kind of got away from it a little bit, and we really got to get back into that. discipline.
Your point is taken, yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to approve Article 22, the appropriation of the paving plan of $550,000 from free cash.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to recommend Article 22. Roll call vote. Member Labrie.
Aye.
Member Salter.
Aye.
Member Lapointe.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 23, appropriation paving plan 5-year borrowing. Vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds and or borrow the sum of $450,000 for the purposes of funding a portion of the fiscal year 2024 paving plan, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow and pursuant to Chapter 24, Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8 of the general laws. And this is a tie-in to the previous article.
And Mr. Chair, do we have a total for all of these, how much we're going to be borrowing? Or if everything were to pass, how much would be under 5-year total?
We do, it's actually built in as part of the capital plan by funding source. I don't have it in front of me in this exact moment, but I can resend it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And we don't know the rate at this time? Or do we?
No, we don't know until we officially go out, so I always assume 4.5%, which is very conservative. It's gonna be well under that typically, unless the banks tank, which you never know.
Well, aren't they raising it? And then I heard the Fed was gonna raise it again, so,
It's been increasing incrementally, but it wouldn't exceed 4.5, not at our credit rating.
okay, thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to recommend Article 23, the appropriation paving plan, 5-year borrowing of $450,000.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to recommend Article 23. Roll call vote. Member Labrie.
Aye.
Member Salter.
Aye.
Member Lapointe.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Article 24, appropriation cemetery perpetual care leaf loader. Vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds the sum of $12,250 for the purposes of funding the purchase of a leaf loader, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow under and pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7 or 8 of the general laws. And am I to, from last night, this is coming out of perpetual care fund?
That is correct.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 24, appropriation out of cemetery perpetual care, $12,250 for a leaf loader.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to recommend Article 24. Roll call vote. Member Labrie.
Aye.
Member Salter.
Aye.
Member Lapointe.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 25, appropriation cemetery perpetual care cemetery expansion. Vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds the sum of $50,000 for the purposes of funding the expansion of the town cemetery on existing town-owned land. And I'll point out, I believe this is coming out of perpetual care fund also.
That is correct.
Okay.
Do we have a balance for the perpetual care fund?
I'll distribute one, but this would not deplete it entirely. And to circle back to your other question, the total amount for borrowing for 5-year would come out to about $150,000 in debt service. It's $784,000. So we have that built into the general operating budget for next year.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to recommend Article 25, the appropriation out of cemetery perpetual care for cemetery expansion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to recommend Article 25. Roll call vote. Member Labrie.
Aye.
Member Salter. Member Lapointe.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Article 26, zoning bylaws. Vote to amend Chapter 9 of the zoning bylaws of the Town of Winchendon entitled Signs by deleting the current Chapter 9 and inserting in its place a new chapter regulating the use of signs in Winchendon, as recommended by the Planning Board in a document entitled 2023 Proposed Zoning Bylaw Revisions, on file in the office of the town clerk and available on the town's website. Questions, comments?
And this will be made available to the voters when they come in for town meeting?
Correct.
I had a question after when I was looking through it, and, because when Nicole was talking about the size of the sign, something sign, to be like 80% of something,
We talked about the fabric store,
right, and it,
and it would be much larger under the new, this,
the new ones,
right.
which would be helpful. And then there was something else, and it had to do with size that I said, I didn't understand what she was, I think it's the electronic signs, the sizing of the electronic signs, that I wasn't very clear on, like how big they could be. That's, yeah,
So presently, they're not permitted. And so,
unless by special permit.
yeah, so you have to get a variance through the zoning board. So the new article that they're proposing does allow them up to a certain size by right, but it's based on a formula relative to setback as well.
Which, that's the part I didn't understand.
Right.
That maybe if somebody could kind of focus on making that a little bit clearer.
Sure.
Thank you. Because it was a percentage, I believe, and, setback versus road frontage and I wish I had asked at the time, but if that could be made a little bit clearer at town meeting, that'd be great.
I'll ask Nicole to highlight that.
Thank you. I know she knew she understood it, but I certainly didn't. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will make a motion to recommend Article 26, the zoning bylaws.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to recommend Article 26. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Article 27, I better get the one that's been corrected. Authorization Stormwater Asset Management Project, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $135,625 for the 2023 Clean Water State Revolving Fund Asset Management Planning Total Project Cost of $135,625 for the Winchendon Stormwater Asset Management Project. The total project cost of $135,625 is comprised of an $81,375 grant, 60% of the total project cost, which will be paid to the town as a reimbursement from Mass DEP and the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. The balance of the project will be comprised of an in-kind services provided by the town valued at $15,000 and a cash contribution from remaining funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, valued at $39,250. Questions or comments?
Nope. Not touching it. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 27, the authorization of the Stormwater Asset Management Project.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to recommend Article 27. Roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So that completes that part of our agenda for tonight. So we're gonna just go quickly through and assign these articles. So starting from the front, we passed over, and anybody can jump in and volunteer to do as many of these as you want.
Mr. Chair, may I just say that May 15th is a very important deadline for me at work. I don't believe I'll be at the meeting. I'll be working late.
So you're saying you're not volunteering?
No, I'm saying that I'm probably going to be at work through the,
Okay, okay.
it's nonprofits.
Okay.
So I'm not going to take anything.
We'll get Member Labrie to take a lot.
We'll miss you.
Okay, so Article 1 we're passing over. Let me get my other one. So the first one under the special town meeting is Article 2, and that's for the snow and ice deficit,
I'll take that one.
okay? Barbara, we'll write the name in nice bold, so we know. Moving on to the annual town meeting, the first one will, I believe that will be presented by the Finance Committee. They'll do the motion.
Correct.
Okay, Finance. So Article 2 is the Cable Public Access Enterprise Fund, to set up that fund. Aren't you on the Communication Committee?
I am. There'll be a whole lot of explaining with that one.
I can take it.
Okay. Danielle has taken Article 2. Next one is the opioid settlement, one of 3. That's Article 3.
I can do those. I'll do 3, 4, 5.
You can do all 3?
Sure. Unless somebody wants them.
Well, not gonna arm wrestle you for it. We're gonna let you- Okay. Article 6 is revolving funds.
How about you?
I can take that. Thanks, Barbara.
Hey, no problem.
Article 7, senior tax work-off.
I'll take that.
Article 8 is the nonprofit. I can take that one. That's easy.
That's how I roll.
That's pretty easy.
That's a winner.
That one's very difficult. Article 9, organizational change.
Hey, Audrey,
I can take it.
Oh, we lose her?
did we lose her?
She's pretending.
No, it's not hung up.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sorry, I sneezed, so I
Oh.
muted.
Oh,
Honestly, I'm thinking that I would be glad to take 17 through 23, which are the capital planning items, as I'm on the capital planning committee. I'd be glad to take that chunk.
okay, well, let me jump ahead on that.
Yeah.
17,
17 through 23 inclusive. I recognize 24 and 25 will also submit, well, 24 also by the capital planning, but that is coming from a fund that already exists. It's not asking to borrow or
Right.
use free cash or anything as such like that.
okay, so we get you for those up to 23.
17 through 23 inclusive, yes.
And so now we're back to Article 9, the organizational change.
I can take that. I was on the committee.
You on the committee? Danielle will take that one. And Article 10, I guess we do that one, but really the moderator goes line by line through it. But
Somebody still has to
said, do the motion.
present it, yeah.
I can do that. Enterprise, number 11.
I'll claim it.
And wastewater. Article 12.
I don't mind doing either wastewater or transfer station.
You can do both.
If no one else wants them, I'll take them, I don't mind.
Okay, you have them.
All right.
It was unanimous. Article 14, the Cable Public Access Enterprise Fund. This is, Danielle's taking this one?
Yep.
It goes with the other one.
That's what I'm thinking.
Now, the school department budget is, the school handles that entire thing. School, okay,
I'll do Monty Tech.
okay. Oh, and 17, 18, 19, 20,
24.
24, cemetery perpetual care. I can do that. Cemetery's straightforward for me. I can,
Yeah, the occupants don't make much complaint.
I can do 25 also. The two of those together.
Okay, yep.
Now, I have a question for the zoning bylaws. Are we doing that one, or is the planning board doing that?
Usually Guy does
Yeah, I
that.
would think Guy would do it.
Because I know like the CP, the Preservation Act folks didn't have a clue that they were supposed to be reading the motion at the last town meeting.
They were notified, but
Guy, yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
Guy's always very good.
So this is going to be done by the planning board? Okay.
Yep.
And the last one is the Stormwater Asset Management Project. I can do this one, I just
Good
probably
for
need to
you.
get more information on it
There you go.
to fully understand it. So that's everything. So our next boss meeting is Monday, May 8th at 6:30.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
motion made to, and seconded to adjourn, roll call vote. Member Labrie?
Aye.
Member Salter?
Aye.
Member Lapointe? Member Anderson?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. We are,
Have a great night. Thank
you
you.
too.